This is the 20th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
All right, welcome back to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. We're going to continue to talk about bass fishing. Just wrapped up about an hour and a half show with Chris Zaldane. Big shout out to him. Those guys are all over the map. He's getting ready to head to South Africa next week. Great appreciation for him jumping on and covering a variety of topics. We went through a little bit of the history. We talked a little bit about the role that social media has started to play in this industry across the board, whether you're an angler, whether you're a sponsor in it, whether you run a league that people depend on for their living. And it was just a casual Labor Day yesterday, taking care of some odds and ends. So I've been gone for like a month. So I had my buddy Tyler came over and he knocked the grass down like once every couple of weeks, but we've had like a bunch of rain. And then last year I thought he was doing me a favor, and I think he was actually playing a prank on me. Jared Miller came over and he had some extra fertilizer, and he's like, "Oh, let me fertilize your yard here, because I got 2.5 acres here." Dude, it grows like 5 times as fast as everyone else's yard now. So I have to mow like 3 times a week all the way through the summer. And I told him about it and he just laughed. So I'm fairly sure he knew that when he dumped the fertilizer in the yard, that it would just make me mow more. But I was knocking down some weed eating around the edges in the back deck, and then boom, my phone blew up. Like 9 people at once. You see what happened? This kind of came out of left field for me. I guess the more I kind of dug into it, it had been on the table for a while, but the National Professional Fishing League came out with an article, kind of a press release by Brad Fuller, president of the league. And the title is "Breaking News, the Future of Forward-Facing Sonar in the NPFL," and we'll bring Brad Fuller in now, who's a busy man. Just did about an hour and a half podcast with Luke Duncan last night. Really dove into it. Luke's been kind of the spokesperson and one of the commentators, play-by-play, color analyst, everything for the NPFL since the beginning. So there's a lot of stuff here that we'll touch on. Go listen to Luke's podcast that Brad was on last night. Really dove into a lot of the details. But dude, you have to be a busy man, and I greatly appreciate you taking a little bit of time out on a Tuesday morning to jump on BTL.
No, Matt, I told you, man, when like you've been there since day one and always been very kind and gracious to the NPFL. So it's my pleasure to get on here and talk to you about it.
I was talking before this, right before we went live. What is the call and text numbers on your phone over the last 24 hours as the president of a league that is a $5,000 entry fee that does live streaming, that has been around for 5 years now, to come out as the first no forward facing sonar during the 2025 season?
Yeah. So I think we came up with about at least 300 texts, and it may be well over that. And, not as many phone calls as I thought, honestly, maybe 50 or 60 direct calls that I've either took and called back or whatever. But yeah, 350-ish.
And have you fielded all of those, or what's your last 24 hours? Did you expect the feedback to be like this? Did you know what was coming down the pike when you said, okay, publish?
Yeah, I think, man, we've been at this for going in year 5. And I think some of the fire that we've been through in year 1, the things we've been through, I kind of had a pretty good idea how this was going to go. And I'd say it's kind of went the script. You know what I mean? Like, we knew how polarizing it would be. We knew there would be a lot of variance in the reactions from ecstatic and people trying to build monuments and build NPFL, carve their bushes in the shape of the shield in their front yards. And then people who were literally trying to burn stuff down. So, yeah, it's been all over the place, but we expected it, I think.
I'll put the link in the description in the bio, it just starts off, after many sleepless nights and countless hours of discussion that touched every corner of the fishing industry, we at the National Professional Fishing League have come to the realization about forward-facing technology. Kind of talks a lot about it. And then in the bold down there, it says, starting in the 2025 season, the NPFL will prohibit the use of real-time imaging units, commonly referred to as live forward-facing sonar, during all official practice and competition. All other sonar, 2D, side imaging, 360 will continue to be permitted. The use of future technology will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, which that line kind of terrified me. I was like, my God, there's something after this?
Oh, and I think that's a great, man, you're a pro at this, man. Like, Mark can be proud. That's a great segue. I think again, I know we don't want to rehash a bunch of the stuff, but I think it's important for your audience because they're much more sophisticated than the low life guys, right?
Easy.
No, man, I think it's important to kind of foundationally let the fans and the people out there know like why we made this decision and what some of the foundational aspects were. And I believe, right or wrong, right? Like whether you agree with or disagree, I'm telling you what I believe. This technology doesn't stop. Technology only evolves. Technology continues to improve. And there's financial incentive for companies to progress. I would have to think that all these companies, they know what's coming next. And Matt, I use technology similar to this in the early 2000s in the military, and I know what the capabilities are. And there's been certain indicators as I watch this technology evolve that leads me to believe that there are certainly more things in the hopper. And I'll be honest, man, there was something I saw at ICAST that kind of jarred me a little bit too. And I don't know if you saw it or not, but there was a device you put on the front of your rod, like you attach it, you clip it to above your reel seat. And what it was is it was Bluetooth to a turret, and wherever you pointed your rod, your turret would point. So you didn't even have to steer it with your foot anymore. Like it would point to where your rod was. So you use your rod to point your forward facing, you make the cast, and now the turret is tracking your lure, not you tracking your lure with the turret. So, I mean, it's just, look, man, how practical is that? Would guys figure it out how to use it? Whatever, the goggles, all that stuff. Like the one thing, so that leads me to my belief that this technology and technology similar to this cannot go unchecked in the bass fishing world because it will literally render the sport unrecognizable from where it is now. That's what I believe. And we just chose to kind of take a look at it now and make a stand now for a lot of other reasons other than that. But that was a main factor in it. So
when you say we, who is involved in we?
So Paul Benson, myself, the ownership group. Mike is the CEO. He's also an angler. So I took Mike's input from the angler perspective and from the fiscal perspective about what this means financially to the NPFL. What are the potential outcomes? What are the impacts to the bottom line? So from a fiscal standpoint, with regards to whether Mike had any input to whether we actually ban it, Mike had no input in that decision. That was solely and explicitly my decision. I took advice from all the other players and we talked about it. And I will say that it wasn't unanimously agreed upon within the ownership group, right? About how we proceed forward and what we do. But once we finally came to the consensus of where we're going, we're all kind of pushing in the same direction as you would expect.
And this is big. I'm putting you with the other two main players in this. I'll put you with Major League Fishing and Bass and the NPFL. So I know that they have angler representatives on the BPT side that anglers can then talk to that. And then the angler representatives talk to the board there on the Bass side. It's no secret. Probably the toughest job of fishing right now is to be on the Bass Tech Committee. They have angler meetings on that. I know that they have emails that go out. They have questionnaires, things like that. They poll the anglers after events. Was any of those steps taken on the NPFL where you polled the entire field, where you had an angler committee, where you allowed the anglers on the NPFL to speak either for or against the decision?
So we did a couple things. The one thing that I don't like to do is ever provide somebody that I'm doing business with anonymity. So I wasn't willing to do a survey where we allowed people to not have a face-to-face and one-on-one conversation as much as possible. I feel like me and you being able to sit in a room, Matt, as an angler and a customer and a person running a business, there's more value in the body language and the sincerity that comes across and where we are and where you are than will come across in an email or survey. I will say that subsequently there was a survey, an angler took it upon himself. He believed strongly that a survey was the way to go. And he provided a survey to the field without any input from us, and he has every right to do that, right? Like, hey man, if you want to know what the field thinks, he has a business that is closely tied to rigging and doing electronics work. But the way those questions were asked and what was done, and there were other reasons I did not want to do that, because I feel like the culture we have here is a very much lift me up, help me kind of mentality when it comes to the anglers. And I felt like that was going to cause a lot of divisiveness for something that we may not even implement, right? We didn't know at the time. So we chose not to do that. But I will literally say, I think I spoke to every single angler in the field at some point or another. We said, hey guys, if you've got a strong opinion about this and you want to tell me what you think, then you pick up the phone and call me, or you catch me at the event. And most of the anglers did that. I was surprised how many guys were indifferent. Hey man, I don't care what you do. I think, and I don't want to quote numbers out of Trent's survey because I don't have them in front of me, but there was a larger than expected population of guys like, look, man, I'm not going to do this. Like, you guys make the best business decision, and then we'll make a decision whether that's good for us, and we'll move forward. Like that's the bottom line. We're not going to get into all the drama.
One of the things that you mentioned on Luke's show, and you said it here, you said it's purely a business decision. We know that sponsors drive this industry, big corporate sponsors, non-endemics, endemics, a lot of big players in the electronics companies. I'm curious what impact or lack of impact that had. The Garments, the Lowrances, the Humminbirds, their parent companies. Was there any interaction with them when this was going on as to, hey, I hear, we'll pay you this to keep it? Or what was the involvement of the endemic electronics companies in this decision, if any?
Zero. I mean, it just, there was no, look, man, I don't want this to come across as like spiteful, or it's matter of fact, like none of those companies have ever supported the NPFL financially. None of those companies really even participate in the content generation side. Like Lowrance didn't even share the winning photo of Mike Corbishley when he was holding a $100,000 check up on the NPFL stage. Now you can start to say, why is that? Have we done our due diligence? Have we done what we need to do? And the answer very well be that we haven't done enough, right? But I don't think, because of where those companies are invested with their dollars and their marketing with MLF and Bass, I just don't think there's enough to go around for the NPFL. And I don't fault those parent companies for making those choices. My job is to grow the NPFL into a big enough platform. They undeniably have to be here. And that's what we're focused on. I'm not focused on who's not here. I'm focused on who is here. But I think there was I think there were some enablers. Matt, this would have been a drastically harder decision if I was going to be kicking money out of the bottom line by making this decision. The reality is that wasn't a problem for the NPFL. Like, we weren't getting any money from those companies anyway. And people say, well, now you're never going to. Well, we'll see, right? Like, I would argue, and I've been working on some strategies to kind of say, hey, man, like, you've got a whole lot of other product lines outside of what's being shoved down everybody's throat in the other leagues. Like, let's see if we can sell some of this or some of that. You know what I mean? Like, just doing our due diligence and not closing any doors. And I think we've got a multi-pronged approach to growing this company in 2025. And this is one, I would say, small piece, but it is a small piece in the grand scheme of things about what our plans are for 25 with content generation, manipulation of content. And just like you guys say, we've got to engage and entertain, right? And that is what the NPFL has been missing from a fan standpoint and from a content generation standpoint. And we are laser focused on getting those two things ramped up in the NPFL to get a product out there that these companies undeniably have to come and partake in.
You guys are midway through the season right now, just coming off a very successful. It looked tough and rough too. Like, you're expecting mid-20s bags, and we saw a little bit of that too. But Gary Atkins, 56 pounds, 12 ounces on Saginaw Bay wind, but I want to scroll down to the bottom there. And I mean, you guys are 118 anglers midway through the season. So, I mean, if you were to look back on that over different courses of the ebbs and flows of the NPFL, you'd have to be like, yeah, I'll take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Are you concerned, or are you optimistic, or what do you think this looks like in 25 as far as anglers saying not for me anymore, or as far as anglers beating down the door trying to get in?
Yes. So I listen, man, and I think we're getting into some of this a little bit later. Like, the human dynamic and all this is, I'm infatuated with it, right? Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, and I listened to kind of what you and Chris were talking about a little bit while I was getting the office cleaned up so I could actually do this. But there are people that this directly aligns with who they are as a person, who they are as a brand, and the companies they support. It aligns very well. Converse to that, there are people that, man, this does not align at all. So if you look, Matt, every year, the minimum turnover we've had in the NPFL from year one to now is 30%, the best we ever had, right? So that number has been much higher. And then you look at the variables that influence that and you go, well, yeah, it makes sense. You were 46% in this year, and here's why. So the reality is, when I sat down with our current angler list and I ran down the list, I couldn't get the number above our worst year. You know what I mean? From where I was at. So, okay. And I honestly think once the emotion wears off this and guys really start to sit back and go, okay, now what am I going to do? Right? Like the emotional high, the shakes that you got because you're pissed off that the NPFL took away something that you have as a staple in your repertoire when it comes to fishing. Once you get over that, now the real evaluation starts about what you're going to do in 2025. I believe, and I may be proved dead wrong, there will be people that stay, and there's already been people that were, and I'm not going to use names, there are people that emotionally reacted, which invoked an emotional response from me on Luke's podcast last night, because this is personal, right? Like, guys, like, oh man, you take this way too personal. Well, I'm sorry, man. Like, this is a big deal to me. And I've tried to do better at that as I've gotten older. I've tried to do better at that as matured as a leader and manager in the NPFL. But when people personally attack you and go after the things that they know are near and dear to my heart, like, we care about anglers. And when an angler says, well, you don't care about the anglers, we prove every day that we care about the anglers. And if this is an indicator that we think otherwise, then you're not listening, in my opinion. And those anglers, this morning, I woke up to some text messages that were like, hey, man, I'm sorry. Like, you're right. I reacted emotionally. I'm there with you. I'm here for 25. And it would surprise you that those anglers are, I think people would be surprised who those anglers are. But I say that to point out that I think the overall retention is going to be higher than what people expected.
Okay.
And I have gotten, of the 300 text messages I got yesterday, there was a lot of those people that are not currently in the NPFL that are asking those types of questions. Hey, what's your schedule?
One? Can I ask?
Yeah.
One?
Yeah.
Has Randy reached out to you yet?
Randy has not reached out.
No Randy Blockett yet.
No.
Dude, I thought he would be 1A on the list. If there's anybody in the game who can get a boat deal, put together the $35,000 in entry fees, and get in the 2025 season, I would think Randy would have been first on the list.
Man, I'm not here to, like, I'll be honest, Matt, like, I've tried to do better. Like, I'm not a consumer of Randy's content, right? Yeah. Like, I think it's polarizing. I think it's clickbaity, and great on Randy. He's grown, dude. He's grown that channel. I do watch the numbers. Like, he has really grown. And Randy, listen, I received probably, I think Michelle told me we had 36 or 37 emails. I'm like, man, like, people just saying, thank you. You know, well, Randy told those guys on his channel, like, hey, you need to go thank the NPFL. You need to go support them by buying their merch. Dude, they did it. You know what I mean? So for that, I'm grateful. But I would have to seriously consider, because Randy's such a polarizing guy, is Randy good for the NPFL or bad for the NPFL from the exposure and what it would bring to the NPFL? And Randy fans are going to say, absolutely, he'd be wonderful. And other people are going to say, no, he wouldn't. But there's been several very high profile anglers reach out. And again, I touched this on with this Luke last night, but when you come to me and you're just spitting venom about the current organization you're with, and you're unhappy and you're displeased and I don't say a word, man. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, listen, it's only a matter of time before I'm in your crosshairs, right? Like, and there are people in this world, man, that we encounter every day that just their happiness, their joy comes from being miserable, right? And there are some anglers like that, I believe, right? That I my concern is that they don't really even know how to be happy. So why would I ever dream that I can make them happy? And you got to be very careful who you align yourself with in this industry, in this business, because we are a culture-oriented and culture-driven organization. And I can't allow cancer to infest what I've spent 5 years building. I say what we have spent 5 years building.
You know what I think it is? I think that it's that that tournament bass fishing is the only place where everything's hustling, bustling, and you get on the dang water and you're just alone with your thoughts for 12 to 15 hours a day after day after. Man, a lot of stuff could go through your head on that. You get anything else and there's always something to distract you, but you get on that water and something's like, dude, I was really pissed. Frankly, I got screwed in the boat draws in the opens this past year. My highest boat draw was a 95, and then all my other boat draws were below 156, 6 consecutive tournaments. And I'm like, dude, why is this? Like, I mean, I was ready to burn the house down. And I'm like, but I mean, why do you think there's such a visceral reaction to things like this, when if you actually take it and look in the grand scheme of things, you look at it, it's not like positive or negative. It's literally just like you said, a business decision.
Well, I think so. Before we get into that part of it, to touch on your point there just a little bit, is literally if you can set back, remove your emotion, and go, what's really good for the sport? Like, what's going to get the biggest fan base, the biggest audience in the sport? And here's I say epiphanies, but you just have these moments of clarity as you're navigating. Because, dude, we've been on this, I say 6 months, it may be longer than that. Like, seriously looking at, we're gonna come to a point where we have to make a decision. We need to be looking at this now. And I have done that personally for at least 6 months. And I will tell you, there's been things that happen. You look at Champlain, St. Lawrence, and Saginaw Bay, right? Take the top 5 cameras from all 3 days. Take away the logos, take away the jerseys, just put a silhouette of an angler up there doing what they're doing. Buddy, it all looks exactly the same. Like, there's no deviation in what you're viewing on the screen. I don't think that's good for the sport. There are fans out there that don't, not all, but there is a demographic of people that are not going to tune in and watch that. Mm-hmm. So if I have the ability to force a reallocation of assets, sponsorship, viewership, and fans, sponsorship, audience, and fans. Audience and fans are 2 separate things, right? You can be a fan and not an audience. You can be in the audience, not a fan. I met people this week who are in the audience, but they're not fans of fishing. They were watching because we were in proximity and they were like, oh, I want to see this, right? And I think the more diverse the overall viewership is for the sport, the better it is for sponsors. The more widely spread the audience is across bass fishing, the better it is for NPFL, the better it is for MLF, the better it is for bass. It's better it is for Matt Painrack and BTL. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is a way to maybe, and there's a question mark there, keep a bigger segment of the non-fans, just the audience, engaged in what we're doing. Theory.
Yeah.
We're going to find out.
Interesting. Well, because so part of me I make my living on BTL as the show, and then I also fish the Bassmaster Open EQs. God knows that we don't make a living fishing the Bassmaster Open EQs, but as an angler, I believe it's also part of that is, hey, we all look the same. Just like, in my opinion, everybody standing on a putting green looks the same. But why do I root for Scotty Scheffler? Or why do I root for Ricky Fowler? Or why am I a Colin Morikawa fan? They all look the same. It's the onus, well, devil's advocate here, is on the angler to differentiate themselves, to know, hey, we're all fishing and we're all doing the same thing here. Why, even though I've only met Luis Fernandez twice at a Classic and at a ICAST. Do I root for the guy? It's because he's the Bass Warrior and he differentiated himself on the water with his exuberance and his joy for the sport, that when I see him at the top, I'm rooting for him at the NPFL level. So I think a lot of that also has to go back on the angler, because in reality, if everyone's bed fishing, they look the same. If everyone's hitting a tennis racket, they look the same. If everyone's hitting a golf shot, they look the same. There has to be an understanding of the angler as a brand and how to differentiate themselves, when we all pretty much look the damn same out there, Brad.
But Matt, you've heard the analogy, and I've got a couple of these that I've came up with in the last 24 hours. You've seen the pictures of like the dad and the daughter out hunting or fishing, and they pan to her and they say, well, she thinks we're just hunting, or she thinks we're just fishing. Like, dude, I say that to anglers. I'm like, bro, you're an entertainer. If you're not entertaining and you're not moving the needle for yourself when you get a live camera, bro, like, you think you're the first angler to ever catch 25 pounds on a swim jig, or you know what I mean, or whatever. Like, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And it's so hard because I think some guys have to focus so much on that part of it. They forget that there's a camera behind them. And this is your opportunity to get sponsors. Whether you can, like, Louis has not always crushed it on live catching fish. He's always crushed it in personality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that type of mentality, when it comes to selling your brand and building your brand, like, hey man, you're not going to be the last guy to ever catch 25 or 30 pounds on any given bait, but people will remember you because of your passion for what you do and your love of the sport. You know what I mean? If you can convey that in a way that's productive, it's marketing 101. The first thing you have to do is you have to stand out. Good, bad, or indifferent. Like, you have to do that. If you're not doing that,
this is a great way to stand out. I mean, this is the sensible way. I remember I was talking to Dave Rush. And I said, dude, and this was like 3 years ago when this whole first thing started. And I was like, it'd be the smartest move for them to just can it, because it would differentiate them. Like, you know how hard it was trying to build a market share and get sponsorship when you came in with 10 live cameras that first year, and you're going against the BPT with 10 live cameras, and you're going against Bass. You've come on the show and talked about how hard it is to get into this space and create value for the organization. This, in my opinion, when you said, quote, this is purely a business decision, I mean, you're taking a risk. It's definitely a risk, but it's a business decision. And I 100%, from someone who's been in the industry for a long time, understand why it was made.
So I gave Luke a couple of these. I'm going to give you your Instagram reel of the day. So when you cut this up and you put this on Instagram, this is going to set the fishing world on fire. But I believe it. And I'm not doing it for that purpose. I'm doing it because I believe it. Man, once we came to the conclusion, I had my angler meeting. We had our angler meeting with the anglers on Wednesday, just to put the last rung in the ladder of, is this the right thing to do? I wanted every angler to feel like they had the opportunity to stand in front of the ownership group in its totality, look us in the eye and say, this is how I feel. And I didn't rule out the fact that, man, we are not those people who go, well, we know it all. There could have been something come out of that meeting that was like, holy crap, I hadn't thought of that. Here's the reality, Matt. That was very, 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 very unlikely to happen. And because the point of where we got to very late in the game was, man, if all 118 anglers told us this was the wrong move and they didn't agree with it, based on my research and what I've looked at and the long range plan for the NPFL, I don't think that would have mattered. You know what I mean? And so an angler not agreeing with the decision is not why I had that meeting. I was making sure that there wasn't some unrock that we had not uncovered, that we hadn't turned over like, oh man, I didn't think of that second or third order effect. We need to evaluate that a little more before we make a decision about this. That didn't happen. I think the guys were confused and the fan base was very confused on, hey, if an angler doesn't agree with it, that's a mark against doing it in the NPFL. That really had no bearing on it whatsoever. Whether an angler likes it or not, or wants to keep it or not, wasn't what we were looking for. We were looking for the aha moment of, man, I didn't think about that repercussion 2 years down the road. We can't tolerate that. We need to reevaluate it. So when guys go, man, 62% of your anglers were against banning forward-facing sonar, you're not angler-centric. that had no relevance on the conversation. We weren't looking for approval. We were looking for the nugget of knowledge that we hadn't thought of. So I feel better today, Matt, with the decision. And I hope I told Ken Duke last night, I think he was the last person, 11:30 or so, I texted before they go to bed. I said, I feel better at the end of the day than I did when I started. And my job tomorrow is to feel better at the end of tomorrow than I did today. You know what I mean? Like you have to have that, eat the elephant one bite at a time. And there's ebbs and flows to that. But man, I agree with you. I'll be honest. After we got so far into this, I told Ken Duke and Mike and I said, man, I think I'm at the point where I don't think there's a scenario where I can't do this. You know what I mean? Like I believe so strongly in this that like anything now is going to be like I'm going to consider it as we're giving up.
Yeah.
Right. So and I'm not that guy. So here we are.
Last question, and then I do want to ask about the rest of the year. You guys are still going strong. You have 2 more stops on the St. Johns River and Lake of the Ozarks coming up to close the season out. Was there a defining moment? Like, do you remember when it was where you went, yes, 100%, it's gone in 2025, to where you talked about the conviction in that, but was there a specific moment where you went, we're doing it?
Yeah, there was. And I remember it distinctly. So we were on the phone with a major conglomerate endemic sponsor. So they own multiple brands. And the question, I didn't ask it. The question was asked like, hey guys, what do you want to hear? What do you want to see? What are your desires? Like if you could have an injection and wave your magic wand and you can make anything happen you want. What specific to the NPFL or the industry in general? And the answer really jarred me, man. Like I really probably kind of took a step back. And they said, guys, we don't care what you do or what anyone does. We just want to see somebody stand up and be a damn leader and have some conviction about what they're doing. Like we want someone to make a decision, articulate it, stand behind it, reason it, and go execute it. That's what we want. And I just thought, dude, that's me. Like that's like I have all those things at my disposal. I feel confident in the decision. And from that point on, man, I kind of decided that now I've went from convincing myself it's the right decision. Someone's going to have to convince me that it's not the right decision. That was a major turning point when I switched gears from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very late in the game. Like that was, I think I was either at Saginaw, or I think it was like the day. Yeah, it was because I was
that's like last week.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like it was, and yeah, no, it was very.
It was like months, and you're trying to keep this under your hat and keep it from out.
No, and I think a lot of people like, look, man, like we don't believe you. Like the decision was already made. I promise you, the decision wasn't made until after the Anger meeting and the following day when we got together. And funny part, Mike wasn't involved in that conversation. He's like, hey, man, you know, I'm here fishing. Like you guys make the decision and let me know what's going on after the fact. Because we already knew the potential financial ramifications. We knew, you know, the different variances in your pro forma and how your budgets would look based on this and that. And it's all conjecture. You don't know until people start writing checks. And you know, we're hard at work on that stuff now. So, you know, hopefully it's extremely risky. Like this is not a slam dunk. But we feel like this gives us the best chance to be here in, you know, 5 or 10 years down the road or longer.
Excited for the rest of the year. It seems like you guys have been on all cylinders for the first 4 and then closing it out with 2 good tournaments.
Yeah, man, the St. John's is going to be, you know, we're going to John Cox's backyard. He's hands down going to be the favorite there without a doubt. But John will even tell you the volatility of that fishery in September and what can happen down there is going to kind of open it up where anybody can play. We expect it to be very tight weights. I mean, to imagine it's any tighter than Saginaw Bay, 15 ounces separated from first to fifth, had a tie for second. The winner won by 1 ounce. Kevin Martin, the day 2 leader by 2 pounds, ended up getting 5th place, and he was only 15 ounces off the lead. We feel like St. John's is going to shape up to be a very tight tournament. But I think the catch rates will surprise people. I think the 5 guys we get on live on Thursday on Friday and Saturday are going to show some diversity in what they're doing in the fishing. So we're excited about St. John's. Out of the land, in true form, a non-prototypical St. John's River venue for us. DeLand's a phenomenal city, very historic, lots of cool stuff downtown. And we're excited to also show the world to the other side, the other end of the St. John's River down there in DeLand versus being up in Palatka.
Okay, cool. And then close the season out on LOZ.
Yeah, man. Since I owned Omega Custom Tackle for several years, was based right there with about 2 hours from Lake of the Ozarks. It was my home lake. I know it better than any lake in the country. I know what it's capable of in October. I'm excited about the content that we're going to generate around that, pulling in some of the locals there that are going to give some insights. I mean, you've got some legendary anglers right there in that area in the Ozarks region, guys like Roger Fitzpatrick, right? Dear friend of Michelle and I, we love him and his whole family. So it'll be interesting to vary up the content that we put out around that event. And we feel like we're going home. So we're real excited about it going to Lake of the Ozarks.
Last question, then I'll let you go. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. Is this a finite decision? Is this the NPFL moving forward, or at the end of the 2025 season, are you going to look at live streaming numbers, sponsorship dollars, angler participation, and reevaluate it on a year-to-year basis?
I don't see, and man, I hesitate to answer finite questions like that, right? But I will say this: I can't imagine a scenario where the NPFL could survive a retraction and to walk back where we are, right? Like I can't imagine how that would look. I can't imagine executing that. I can't imagine the industry and our fan base tolerating that. Anglers don't want to hear this. Anglers are vital to the NPFL, any organization. If you don't have anglers, you have nothing. I think the anglers would tolerate it, potentially. We're going to find out, but the fans just wouldn't, right? Like, I think you talk about ostracization and pushing people away, like, pull a Kamala and get all flip-floppy and, chase ghosts with, well, this is what we're doing now. And look, man, this isn't the last big decision we're making for the year. We've got 2 more major announcements that we're going to let this percolate. We're going to take advantage of the news cycle. We're going to let this run its course, and then we're going to dump another one on the public. We've got 2 more, and I feel the third of those announcements may be more. It won't be as volatile. It won't be as polarizing, but it's going to generate a lot of discussion. And this is something that I've been advocating for years internal to the organization. And I think I just beat everybody into submission, and we're going to make a major change with regards to the rules in 2025 that may be more polarizing or more talked about than forward-facing Sonar, but not more polarizing.
Oh, there's so many things running through my head right now.
Good.
We'll just leave it on that, Brad.
Okay, perfect.
Like I said, I really appreciate it. It was good. Go check out the full hour and 20 minutes that Brad did with Luke Duncan. Covered a lot of stuff that wasn't covered in Luke's podcast, but definitely wanted to get you on some major breaking news in the industry that dropped yesterday on Labor Day. And have fun down in Florida.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right. See ya. All right. That is President of the NPFL, Brad Fuller. We're going to take a break. When we come back, some closing thoughts. I don't know how deep I want to get into it. I have some closing thoughts on this. Yeah, I'll do some closing thoughts on this. It's BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back right after this.
Gamakatsu, the innovation leader in fish hooks, is launching Nano Alpha technology in 2024. Nano Alpha is a new finish available on Gamakatsu's most popular hook styles. It delivers 2 times slicker performance, 4 times better corrosion resistance. Nano Alpha technology makes the world's greatest fish hooks even better in 2024 to help anglers catch more fish.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
Your early morning mentality is your every hour mentality. All gas, no brakes. Focus, purpose, power. Destined for the water, but confident everywhere else. A calming buzz before the storm, truth of nature itself. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. There's a limit out there, but it's not with your gear. Unrelenting power delivery. Unparalleled weight savings. Keeping you on the water, whether you run a 9.9 or outscoping your best 5. In this rare air, there's power in the silence. It's a mindset, thinking only of the things that matter and freeing your mind from the things that you trust.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top 100, Strike King.
Gear that just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. AFCO. Any fish, any water.
Gamakatsu, the innovation leader in fish hooks, is launching Nano Alpha technology in 2024. Nano Alpha is a new finish available on Gamakatsu's most popular hook styles. It delivers 2 times slicker performance, 4 times better corrosion resistance. Nano Alpha technology makes the world's greatest fish hooks even better in 2024 to help anglers catch more fish.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
All right, second BTL of the day. Big shout out to President of the NPFL, Brad Fuller, for coming on, speaking very candidly, and excited to see how that goes in 2025. Plus, he teased a little 2 more major announcements. I mean, I'm sitting here off the top of my head thinking, is it a number of fish? Is it bringing back the A? Like, there's a whole bunch of different things that could be done, but I think the what I got from everything that I've read with the article that is on the National Professional Fishing League, all spelled out.com, from Luke's show, from what Brad talked about today, it was a business decision. And I respect him coming out and saying that, for not saying, hey, we polled and this is what the majority, because then you have the minority. And it was something that I think if you do it, it has to be finite. And this is what I'll say about this. And the way that it's looking now, purely opinion piece here, not negative, not positive, from a guy who has to talk about this for numerous hours every single day, and a guy who fishes the Bassmaster Open EQs. The more you have in or out, whether it's, we're going to use it for a portion of the time and not a portion of the time, or half the season and not half the season, all you're doing is you're prolonging and you're antagonizing the debate. And once you have a finite, like, this is what it is or this is what it isn't, you're doing a disservice to guys like Drew Gill, to guys who are forward facing, because you're devaluing their accomplishments without fully understanding what goes into winning that tournament. If you're saying, oh, well, he just won it because it was one that they used it, or he caught the majority of his weight in this period because he's using it. Conversely, if you do away with it, you're also going to say, oh, you know, these are anglers who have dedicated to their craft and they're finding fish and they're doing everything to hang with the guys who have done it without the forward-facing technology for a number of years. A win is a win, and I think it's a travesty now that you have a lot of highly talented young anglers, and I don't know the guy from Uncut Angling, I think is who it was at all. He's like one of the OGs of the YouTube. It's got 100,000 views on it, and he did a kayak video where he clipped in a bunch. BTO was in there, Mercer was in there, Ike was in, a bunch of guys were in there, and they were talking. It basically kind of showed the landscape, the atmosphere that we're in right now. But I think for all of the leagues, there needs to be and I think there's a cat and mouse game going on now between MLF. What are they going to do? What is Bass going to do? I think you've got big tech, the big brands that are involved trying to decide what they're going to do. Everyone wants to play it close to the vest. The NPFL is the first one out. I think they did it at the right time. And you're never going to make everyone happy. So this is my point that I'll say this. I grew up in the pre-forward facing live scope and all that era. The amount of nuance and technical understanding that it takes to be a top 0.1% bass fishing, to make a living going on the water, to be one of these 180 guys that are at the top level of the BPT or the Bassmaster Elite Series is astronomical. You cannot understand how much little nuances make into it. I am a firm believer 100% that there is just as much skill, just as much technicality, and just as much nuance in the forward facing game that 99.9% of fans do not yet currently understand, because it has either not explained or because your mind is also automatically close to it. And this isn't whether it should be or shouldn't be. This is to the anglers who are doing it right, who are spending the time on the water. Just like you would have micro nuances when you're flipping cover where guys are better at generating bites, the same thing exists in forward facing sonar, to the point where it's extremely, extremely difficult. Other than the fact that if you look at the results, there are specific guys that time and time again are at the top of their game. And the people that are at the top, these point, I listen to them talk, I hear them talk, I talk to them on the phone. I fished with a lot of them over the past 2.5 months when I was on the road. I jumped in a lot. I mean, I dove into this as deep as I can. And the nuance and the understanding is just as intricate, just as talented, and takes just as much time as it does in the non-forward facing game. The only thing is that I believe you learn more in a quicker amount of time because your feedback is instant. So what you learn from flipping a jig over a year or 2 years, or cranking rock over 2 or 3 years, because you do have real-time feedback, those nuances are recognizable and the adjustments are easier to make from it. But you take, like I said, a Drew Gill, a Kyle Patrick, and you get in the boat with them, they're catching fish that every single person that has forward-facing sonar are not catching because they're better at it, because of the nuance and the understanding. And you go to every single different fishery, and I fished 10 different fisheries over the month of June, July, and August, from Oklahoma to Michigan to New York to Canada, all across. It's not the same bite everywhere. And what worked in one lake doesn't work on the next. And there are incredible nuances and differences that I just don't think a lot of people understand. And it's hard to convey that because you can't just look at it and see it. And a lot of these guys aren't talking about it because that is what is giving them the advantage. It's the same thing that they're not talking about for years and years and years until there were live cameras in the boat. And then they're like, oh, he's using a blue sapphire in that color water. How come he never mentioned that before? It's because he had a live camera in his boat. So it's very interesting. I try to stay as neutral as I possibly can on this. I'm actually working on a Legends Week coming up. I want to talk to a bunch of bass fishing Hall of Famers about tactics, non-forward facing related stuff. Like I said, tomorrow we have Matt Becker on. He's going to talk about the team championship series and then Fish the Moment with Johnny Schultz at the end. So kind of some uncharted water, but we did right around 3 hours of live streaming today. Big shout out to Chris Zaldane in the first part of the show. I hope I articulated my thoughts clearly. I feel like I got like a little circuitous there in the middle, but Carl Jochimson, I'll say this, and I think he was on Mercer when he said this. He said, and this is the truest statement that there's ever been about this. Everybody's right and everybody's wrong. And when that's a statement, it's hard to placate hard to make everybody happy. So we'll see what it is, but that's all we got for today. Working on next week, since I'm not going to the Mississippi River, that open, only fished the first 7. We are going to do some viewer feedback shows with some fan favorites. So next week, 8:30 a.m. I might throw in an evening show, but we're going to put the link for the show for the StreamYard in the description on YouTube. We've done this before. If you want to jump on, you want to ask a question, you want to BS with the guest, have a good time, we're going to do that. And then also keep your eyes open. We're getting very close to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame auction. We're also giving away, as we have for the last 3 years, the BTL experience, where you get to come in, co-host an episode of BTL. You can pick your guest, assuming I can get him or her, whoever you want on. And then we'll go fishing for the day. Giant crappie, bass, your call. Also some other really cool BTL related items. My buddy Juice from Juice's Jigs putting together a full pack of his hair Mickeys, his hair jigs that are probably one of the hottest baits out there right now. I've got Epic Eric from Epic Eric's Bass Lab and Smallmouth Crush with Travis Manson that's putting together an insane auction item of impossible to get balsa crankbaits, spinner baits, a lot of crankbait makers that aren't around anymore. He's putting that together. We've got Frank Scalish that's putting together a autographed and one-of-a-kind drawing, an hour-long dissect the lake kind of locker room session with Frank Scalish on that. And then we also talked Ben Milliken into giving away another day on the lake, another fishing trip with Ben Milliken. Last year, I think that went for like $16,200 amongst a lot of other stuff that a lot of the great guys at the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame board and fans of the sport are putting together. So I need to hit the music. Great show. We'll be back tomorrow. 2 more shows tomorrow as we get back into the swing of things in studio. This has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Central Time. See ya.